Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to my new video. My name's AJ. I'm here to talk about Russia again. And today's video is quite interesting. I'm going to go through a list of all of the companies, financial centers, sports clubs, everything and every single company that's sanctioning Russia or boycotting Russia. I'm going to go through it all. And this is the latest list as of today. Today is 5th of March 2022. Before I start, guys, I just want to let you know that it's very, very important you support channels like myself. As most of you will know, I'm very, very deeply saddened by RT being taken off the air. I can't see RT anywhere in UK. It's not on YouTube. It's not on any television channels. So I'm very, very saddened by this. And RT was one of my favorite channels. It's one of the few channels that give you a completely different outlook, and I must say I'm deeply, deeply saddened by the actions of this government, from the Western government, taking out channels like RT. Is completely against freedom of expression, freedom of speech, and I'm totally against it. And you see all of the journalists in the West, how idiotic and stupid they are with their ridiculous articles. And that's how the government wants these journalists to be. They want them to be stupid. They want them to brainwash the public with ridiculous, outrageous articles. If you are a journalist and you speak the truth, you get put in jail. And look at Julian Assange. So you see, the West doesn't really have the freedom of speech, freedom of expression that it talks about. You know, how can you take out RT, an independent news channel, out the air because they don't want people to listen to the truth? They don't want people to hear the truth. There's only a few channels like myself who actually spread the truth out there. We completely go against the narrative. We're not brainwashed like the rest of the public. And we don't believe in all of these ridiculous lies coming out of Parliament, coming out of the governments, coming out of the mainstream media. So if you want a completely different point of view and a different outlook, different from all of the lies that the media has been sending you, then it's important you follow channels like myself. That's why it's important to support me on my Patreon, or you can buy me a coffee as well. The links are in the description. So without further ado, let's get on with the show. So I found this article, and this article gives you a full list of all of the companies that are boycotting Russian product or boycotting Russia completely. And you can see from this list there's a lot of logos in there. And I'm going to try and go through them one by one. The list is below, and let's go through them, shall we, together. So I'll start with the financial sector and the financial market. So let me tell you something. It's not just the Russians that are losing out. You can see from articles such as this: Japan, US, Europe bank risk losing from 150 billion Russia exposure. Stranded assets. How many billions are stuck in Russia? Banks scramble to figure out how much they'll lose if Russia economy implodes. Global banks face costly, arduous process to exit Russia. And you can see it's not easy to sanction a country, especially its financial sector. So let me tell you something. Russia has been preparing for these sanctions and these boycotts for years, ever since Crimea, and that was 8 years ago. So a lot of these banks, you know, they're not going to have assets abroad because they know as soon as any other conflicts happen around the world, they would be the first to be sanctioned and all of their assets will be frozen. So a lot of these banks, it doesn't matter what these media outlets tell you, since Crimea, a lot of banks were not being able to do any business abroad because of the sanctions, because of Crimea. And so they've had 8 years to prepare for this. And the Western banks actually have a lot of assets in Russia itself, or in Russian banks. And this is why all of these articles are coming out saying there could be up to 150 billion lost because of these sanctions, because they're going to be in Russia, they're going to be in assets in Russia or outside Russia, and the money is in Russia, so they're not going to be able to get it out if these banks are sanctioned. So yeah, I mean, look, Russia's economy will suffer in the long term. They are being sanctioned, but I'm just saying Russia's not the only country that's going to get affected. European banks are going to be affected. US banks are going to be affected. Japanese banks are going to be affected. Citibank is going to be affected. There's a lot of banks and a lot of financial institutions who bought into a lot of assets, pensions, trust funds, investments in Russia, or investments in the oil sector. All of these companies, all of these financial companies who've given out loans, they're going to be the affected ones. Russia is not going to be as affected as you think. Russia had 8 years to prepare for this, but the Western banks have not had much time to prepare for this. So you see, it's not just Russia who's suffering. The whole world is going to be suffering, and this could have financial implications to the whole world. And don't forget, we're all just coming out of the pandemic, so there's still a lot of issues, financial issues with the world, especially US. US has been printing out a lot of money. Europeans have been printing out a lot of money. They've been putting stimuluses in companies. They've been bailing out companies. And they're going to have to increase the tax, and obviously oil prices have gone up. So there's a lot of financial issues around the world at the moment, and the financial sector cannot take another hit like this with more sanctions happening. These sanctions are not just going to hit Russia, they're going to hit the Western market as well. And you'll see a lot more of these articles coming out over the next few weeks. People love to spread the news that we're hitting Russia. Russia's really going to get affected. Yeah, Russia's suffering. The people are suffering. The ruble's crushing. But nobody is reporting on what the impact is on the Western markets. Nobody. And this is the truth. Western markets are going to be affected. So do not believe all of this crap going around mainstream media that Russia is about to collapse. It is not going to collapse, and I'll tell you why. Okay, so to understand the Russian economy and how it's going to be affected, you need to look at what Russia exports and what Russia imports. So let's look at last year's figures, shall we, and see what Russia has exported. And you can see from the top countries that Russia's been doing businesses with, China is the number one, 112 billion turnover last year. Germany, 46.1 billion. Netherlands, US, and followed by Turkey. And as you know, Germany is probably going to be the big loser here, because there's a lot of trade that goes on between Germany and Russia, and there's a lot of investments of Germany that are in Russia which are going to be frozen, and Germany will be the biggest loser. The biggest winner out of all these countries is going to be China. A lot of businesses that are going to be moving from the other countries are just going to be focused mainly on China. So China's turnover trade is probably more than double or even triple over the next few years. So what does Russia export? The number one thing is fuel and energy, and you can see 53.8% of exports are fuel and energy, and that is growing year after year. As you know, Russia is building 2 new pipelines to China, is building a pipeline to India. It's increasing its energy and gas infrastructure across Russia. Is finding new gas deposits almost every month because of global warming. The permafrost is melting, so they're finding new and new gas deposits almost every month. And look at the prices, look at the gas prices, look at the oil prices. It's a record high at the moment. So when you have 53.8% of your economy is exporting fuel, oil, gas, can you imagine the amount of money that Russia is making from this? We're talking about more than $1 billion every single day. So Russia is laughing all the way to the bank if you think that any sanctions or any of this is going to be affected. Yeah, do you really think that Europeans are going to stop buying oil and gas from Russia? No, that's not going to happen. USA is not going to stop buying gas and oil from Russia. These sanctions do not affect this business, so that will continue, and that is Russia's main business. So these sanctions, even though they look on paper like it's going to affect Russian economy. It's not. So let's look at what else is happening, shall we? Metals and metal products. So these are raw materials from mining. As you know, Russia's got huge amounts of territories. They have huge raw materials that China needs, rest of the world needs. So these are stuff that the rest of the world needs. And if European or American companies do not want to buy these rare earth metals and rare earth chemicals or raw materials that Russia has, then China will buy them easily. China will buy them, and China needs them. And then you got chemical products, 7.6%. Then you got one of the things that a lot of people don't realize: food products and raw materials. Russia is one of the biggest sources of wheat that it provides to China, provides to Germany and the rest of the world. Ukraine does as well. Ukraine is also a very high wheat producer. And with Russia taking over most of Ukraine, and you'll probably, I'll probably estimate that half of Ukraine is going to be taken over by Russia. You got your areas, which is Donbass and Luhansk, but the rest of Russia, I think Russia will control. I mean, I can't be sure, but that's the way it looks like at the moment. So the grain production in Ukraine will be cut by half, and grain production in Russia will be increased. Plus, don't forget, these pipelines that are going through Ukraine now is going to be controlled by Russia. Russia will control half of Ukraine. So imagine the grain output, the agricultural output that will increase in Russia. And China will buy most of it easily. China has 1.4 billion people, so they need a lot of food to support that many people. And instead of China buying it from ridiculous America with their ridiculous sanctions, they've got sanctions in every single agricultural product that China buys from America. And with all of these sanctions that they've given to China, China will be happily buying more stuff from Russia. Recently, before the Olympic Games, or actually before this war started, China got rid of limits from the amount of wheat that Russia can sell to China. So there's no limits on it now. So Russia can sell as much wheat as possible to China, and China will happily accept. Then you have a growing population in India as well, and India is a developing industrial powerhouse. So there's more and more factories being built in India. They will need a lot more energy, they will need a lot more oil and gas, they will need a lot more food. And as you know, India has not placed any sanctions on Russia, so Russia is laughing. You got 1.4 billion people in China, you got 1.3 billion, 1.4 billion Indians in India. That is more than enough people to survive with. Europe, you can't compare European population and the population of America to China or India. That is more than 2/3 of the world's population in China and in India alone. And then you got Central Asia as well that Russia can provide to. They can provide to Africa as well. So all of these Western sanctions, thinking that they're going to be hurting Russia, they're not. It's a huge world out there, and there's other countries that Russia can easily trade with. It doesn't need to trade with Europe. And what Europe is going to have to do now, their economy is going to be going down over the next few years, because they're going to have to buy very high expensive oil and gas from America. Nord Stream 2 has been pretty much shut down, or it's never going to be opened, and Europeans have pretty much shot themselves in the foot. Europeans will suffer over the next few years. Ordinary citizens will have to pay high gas prices, high inflation costs, high taxes, and people are not going to be happy at all. Now let's look at Russia's imports, and this is where Russia will suffer, because a lot of stuff that's imported from Europe or America, they cannot import anymore. So let's have a look at what their main imports are. You can see here in 2019 Russia imported 23 billion of goods. Most of the goods are, you can see, cars, packaged medications, vehicle parts, broadcasting equipment, planes, helicopters and spacecraft. And you can see here the origins mainly is coming from China, Germany. So China and Germany, Belarus, Italy, Poland, Netherlands, France. So the thing that really pops out is China. And if Germany is not going to sell any of these products like cars, vehicle parts, Russia's just going to buy it from China. As you know, China has got the biggest, largest EV market in the world. They've got hundreds of companies making hundreds and thousands of EV vehicles. And Russia can have a green revolution and start importing Chinese cars instead of German cars, for example. And they can pretty much set up their EV architecture and set up charging points all over Russia and just have Chinese cars running around. They don't need European cars. In fact, Europe is losing out. Russia is going to be the next superpower, because when when climate change hits over the next few years, in the next 10-20 years, when the global temperature starts rising, all the ice caps will start melting. Russia will have huge amounts of agricultural space. The Northern Sea route will open up. There's a huge amounts of potential for Russia to be the next superpower. Huge amounts. I mean, look at the land they have. They just don't have the people. But, with climate change, there could be a lot of climate migrants happening over the next 10-20 years. A lot of people from Africa and other parts of the world might start moving across to Russia, because Russia's got the space. They have the land. They can... A lot of people might immigrate there. I mean, while the rest of the world is burning hot, too hot to live, Russia would have the perfect weather. So I can see a lot of people moving to Russia, if global warming carries on the way it is. Anyway, just to summarize, all of these imports that Russia gets from the West, it's all going to be coming from China now. China has a huge manufacturing capacity. They pretty much are self-sufficient in China, and they can make whatever they want. They have a huge high-tech sector. They can provide Russia with everything that they need. And Putin is not an idiot. He's looked at every single statistic. He's looked at every single detail. He knows, or he knew what the West would have done. He knew the West would have sanctioned him. So he's looked at every single thing. He said, okay, this is what we import. Instead of getting it from Germany, we'll get it from China instead. Instead of getting this part from Italy, we'll get it from China. Instead of getting this part from France, we'll get it from China. He's looked at every single import. So he's covered all of his bases. Putin would not have gone into Ukraine if he did not think about all of this. He's been planning for this for years, for 8 years since Crimea. So he is a very calculating man, and he's a very clever man, and he would have looked at all of this before going into Ukraine. So let's carry on look at this list, shall we? So I'm going to come to the business part now, and anyone who has opened a business will know how difficult it is to open a business, whether you open it in your own country or whether you're opening abroad. It is very difficult. So to open up any business, you need capital, you need to have the funds, you need to find a location, you need to either rent or you need to buy a property, you need to do it up, get some builders in, then you need to advertise, you need to buy stock, you need to hire staff, and then you have the ongoing running costs, operating costs. And a lot of these businesses, or any business you start, you're not going to get a profit within the first 5 years or maybe even 10 years. All businesses, you need huge capital in the beginning, and then you work over the years, and eventually you get profit, after 5 or 10 years, depending on the business. And that's how businesses work. So I'm saying that because it's not easy to suddenly get up and leave from Russia. Because if you do, you lose all of that work, all of that money. It's not easy. I mean, one thing is talk about politics, and if you're a company, you said, yeah, I stand with Ukraine, but are you really prepared to lose millions or sometimes billions of dollars or pounds just to make a statement? I mean, it doesn't seem right. I mean, I've got companies such as BP and Shell who are leaving ExxonMobil. I mean, they are huge companies. I mean, don't get me wrong, but there's other companies on the list as well. There's also companies like H&M. H&M are part of the naughty group because they also annoyed China because they said they're not going to source stuff from Xinjiang, and all of the Chinese netizens were so angry they boycotted the whole of H&M in China. So it serves them right, so they lost a lot of business there. But H&M is doing the same thing. A lot of these other companies are doing the same thing, but companies like Shell, BP are talking about walking out of investments. There's also lots of other companies shutting up shop. We're talking about IKEA and loads of other shops, Western shops are shutting up in Russia. And I just want to say that it's not very easy to walk out and leave, because you lose all of that money, you lose all of that investment, and you're not going to get it back. And Russia recently signed a bankruptcy notice as part of their constitution, which means any Western brands that walk out of Russia, they will lose all of that money, they will lose all of those funds. The stock exchange in Russia is actually been shut down. So if you've invested in stocks and shares in Russia, or if your company is in the stock exchange, you won't be able to sell your stock, basically. So basically you're stuck. You know, you can't sell. Only chance you have is just to walk away. And if you walk away, the bankruptcy agreement that Russia has recently signed means, you know, all of your assets will be taken away and given to the Russian people, all of your assets. Then you see headlines such as this: UK businesses and fund managers scramble to cut ties with Russia's Kremlin-linked firms. So what is a fund manager? Fund manager basically takes your funds, like a pension, for example, and he invests your money into Russian stocks and shares, because Russian stocks and shares are quite good at the moment, especially the oil stocks and shares. You can see how much the oil price has risen over the past year or so. So if you got stocks in oil, Russian oil, you could be in for a lot of windfall, a lot of money. So these fund managers basically take your pension or take your investment or child trust fund, for example, and they would put it in Russian basically stocks and shares. And you can see from this article as well, divesting Russian assets proved difficult for investors who want to do the right thing. So it's not easy to take this money out of Russia once you put it in, because you've invested a lot of money and you've invested a lot of money in your stocks and shares. And what Russia has done, they've shut down their stock exchange, and it's not easy for these companies now to take their money out. So the only way they will be able to do the right thing is to walk out, and it seems like a lot of these companies are walking out. And you can see excuse me, British Gas, Total, City fund managers in charge of trillions of pounds are rapidly dropping investments in Russia in response to the Ukraine invasion. So it sounds like they are just cutting ties and they are forgetting about all of their investments. They're not getting the money back, and they don't want to get the money back because they seems like they want to make a statement. But I don't think that is the case. I mean, nobody wants to lose money. You know, nobody wants to lose money. They might say this in front of the papers, but secretly, I think they are doing everything they can to come to a solution. Nobody wants to walk away from millions of pounds or billions of pounds, and they might be doing that just for lip service, just to show that they are part of Ukraine. But secretly, you know, every single company doesn't want to lose money. They got shareholders, they got, you know, profit and loss margin they need to have, and it's not easy just to walk away from Russia. So it sounds like a lot of these companies, even if they are walking away, they will be walking away with nothing, and I don't think it's feasible for them to do that. But if they do that, then, you know, good luck to them. Saying that, there are companies who have completely cut ties with Russia. I'm talking about Shell, talking about BP, Boeing. There's a lot of oil companies who have actually done that. So if you're a big massive company, you know, earning billions and billions of dollars, you know, per year, you can probably afford to do that. But if you're a medium-sized company or a smaller company, there's no way you'd walk away from all of that investment. And if you do, then you're an idiot. So the point I'm trying to say is, all of these lip service, all of these companies are coming online, speaking to reporters, and all of these journalists are publishing all of these articles saying, oh, Russia's suffering, they're losing out on all of these investments, all of these companies are sanctioning them, all of these companies are boycotting them, but they don't understand business. It's not just Russia that's losing out, the companies themselves are losing out. If you spend all that time, energy and money investing in another country and you suddenly walk out, then who loses more? Russia or you? You lose out more. These journalists, they don't understand business. They don't understand how the business world works. It's not just Russia that's losing out, the West loses out as well. So if Russia's losing billions, the West is losing billions as well. Because of all of these sanctions pointing to Russia, because of all these companies boycotting, some are banning Russia, and all of these rules that they're putting in place, it's not just hurting Russia, it's hurting the West as well. But the media is not going to tell you that. Media is going to say Russia's the one against sanctions, Russia's the one that's hurting, Russia's the one that's going to collapse. They forget to talk about the impact that's happening to the rest of the world. They're not going to say that. Because if they say that, people are going to say, hang on a second, what do you mean I have to pay more taxes? What do you mean my gas bill's going to go up 3-4 times? No way, I'm not supporting that. People are going to riot in the streets. So they're not going to tell you the full story. They're just going to give you a bit of lip service. They will tell you Russia's struggling, we're hitting Russia hard with sanctions, yeah, they're really hurting, the people are standing up in Russia, or everyone's against Putin, the people are going to overthrow Putin. All of these papers are ridiculous. Every single one of them. Every single one is following a narrative, coming up with ridiculous articles, and thinks people are going to fall for it. Unfortunately, most people are falling for it. People don't have an alternative point of view. They've got rid of RT, so RT would have told people the truth. So not many people can see the truth or hear the truth, so they're following this narrative. And I feel sorry for most of the people around here. They haven't got a clue what's going on. So we've already gone through the financial market, and I've already said that not just Russian financial market would suffer, but the Western financial market would suffer as well. Then you got this as well. So I'll go through this list as well. Apple has stopped selling its product to Russia. Again, Russia doesn't care. China has got a lot of phone brands coming out of China. They got Huawei, they got Xiaomi, they got Oppo. They got a lot of phone companies in China. They got Honor as well. And these Apple products or Apple phones are just going to be replaced by Chinese phones, or Russians will create their own phones. So that really does not matter to Russia at all. Payment system, Google Pay or Samsung Pay are no longer operating in Russia. That doesn't matter, because they'll use Chinese payment methods. Chinese use Alipay, WeChat Pay. So there's a lot of alternatives. So Russia is not going to worry about that. PayPal has frozen transactions on Russian bank cards. Again, this is an old sanction. PayPal, since the first sanctions from Crimea, there's not many PayPal transactions going on in Russia, and Russia would have prepared for this, so I don't think they care much about that. So Visa and MasterCard have blocked access to sanctioned Russian banks, and I think this probably be more of an issue for Russia, because Visa and MasterCard is used widely around the world for buying and selling. I think they will probably be affected more with this one. So we'll see how they kind of react. And you can see American Express as well. So they probably already have created alternative ways to do it, alternative ways to pay. The Chinese have got the digital yuan, just came out, so hopefully that will be an option, and so we'll see how that goes as well. Lithuanian payment system. Lithuania and Russia do not get along, so I don't think they care about any of that. I don't think they want to trade with Lithuania. I don't think there's much trade going on between Lithuania and Russia, and I don't think Russia will use any Lithuania payment system. I think this is just something Lithuania jumping on the bandwagon and wanting to say, oh, we're with the West, we're against Russia. Russian users will not be able to create new accounts on Twitter. Again, I don't think they care. They know a lot of these Western social media accounts have been already banned in Russia. They've banned Facebook, they've banned Twitter, they've banned YouTube. So I don't think the Russian people care or want to use Twitter, because I've seen Twitter the other day and it's just full of Western propaganda, fake news. I don't think they care. There's nothing independent about Twitter. It's all pro-Western stuff, and Twitter removes any pro-Russian accounts or anybody that wants to kind of talk about it in an independent manner. They get blocked or they get deleted. Anyone wants to shit on Russia, Twitter lets them. So that's how it works. OnlyFans have restricted access to Russian and Belarus models. Well, I don't know about that, but yeah, I think OnlyFans is some sort of porn thing, if I can remember, but I don't know. I don't know if any Russian or Belarus women use that stuff, but we'll see. I can't comment on that. YouTube has blocked Russian state media channels RT and Sputnik. Well, Russia has blocked YouTube as well. And I've already mentioned RT being blocked. Not very happy about that, actually, because RT was one of my favorite channels, go-to channels, and they do speak a lot of truth and what really goes on around the world. So it's a shame they've done that, and it's completely against freedom of speech. So I'm completely against that. Major auto manufacturing leaving China: Audi, Volvo, Jaguar, Land Rover, BMW, Mercedes. If you notice, most of these are German companies, German automakers. So Germany will lose a lot of trade with Russia because of this, and Germany's economy is going to be going down. With the rise of electric motors, the rise of Chinese cars, China is creating vehicles at a much cheaper price compared to the EV cars as well, compared to gas cars. And I know a lot of German car companies are really going to struggle over the next few years to compete with Chinese cars, compete with Tesla as well, American cars. So we'll see how German economy does, but I don't see German car companies doing as well as they did last 30-40 years. They're going to really struggle over the next 10 years, especially with the high price of goods, materials. There's also a shortage of semiconductors as well. So car companies have got a real tough time over the next few years, and I believe EV cars are going to be the next big thing, and Chinese EV cars are very, very cheap compared to the rest of the world, and I think they will pretty much lead the way. Russian automobile manufacturing company AutoVAZ will be left without French components. Well, again, they'll diversify to Chinese components. I don't think they care much, to be honest. German Daimler truck. So you can see a lot of German companies, German car companies, truck companies are stopping manufacturing in Russia. They're just losing out because Germany and Russia are very close neighbors, and Russia will increase in terms of its economy over the next few years. You see the gas prices and oil prices are sky high at the moment, so Russia will make a lot of money over the next few years, and Russia's economy will improve. I think they will get over these sanctions. People underestimate how good the Russian economy is. They don't have much debt, for example. It's not like the Western systems. Western systems is full of debt, like America is 30 trillion in debt. It's nothing like that in Russia, and I think Russia will survive. Swedish truck manufacturer Scania. So I've already gone through all the car companies. 32 countries, including the United States, have closed their skies to Russian aircraft. So let me tell you this: if all of these countries are not allowing Russian aircraft to fly over their airspace, Russia is not going to allow these countries to fly over Russian airspace. And if you think about it, what's the quickest distance from Europe to Asia? Asia is where most of the people are. You got 1.4 billion people in India, we got 1.4 billion people in China, and so there's a lot of people flying back and forth between. There's a lot of business in terms of that. So if European planes can't fly over Russia, they're going to have to find alternative ways and alternative methods, and that means it would take extra 4 or 5 hours, or they have to stop over in other places, and that's more expensive for the airlines, especially the European airlines. And they've just come out of coronavirus pandemic, so a lot of these airlines have not had much business over the past couple of years, so a lot of them are in debt, so they need to make as much money as possible. So doing this means, they're going to have to spend more on fuel or more on stops, or they're going to have to buy bigger planes or new planes that fly longer. They can't fly short haul anymore. So I think the Europeans and the Americans will suffer more because of this. The Russians will just simply travel more to Asia, more to China, Southeast Asia, India, instead of Europe or America. I think the Russians are just going to fly there. They're not going to bother going through European airspace. So this is going to affect American or European airlines, and it's probably going to affect places like Germany more, and it's going to affect the airline industry in Europe as well. So the world's biggest chip maker, TSMC, has stopped supplying semiconductors to Russia. So TSMC has done the same thing to China, and China is working on building a semiconductor ecosystem inside China itself. China has poured billions and billions into building this ecosystem, and right now China is the biggest producer of semiconductor chips in the world. And I'm not talking about the latest chips, which are 5 nanometers, 4 nanometers, produced by TSMC and Samsung. China can produce 28 nanometers chips, and they're already testing and ready to go on mass production 14 nanometers chips, and they're also testing 7 nanometers chips as well. So they are catching up, and I think it will take another 5 years or maybe just a little bit more to catch up with the West. I don't think it's impossible. You can bet against them. I mean, a few years ago China didn't even have a space program. Now they are leading the space race. They are leading NASA. China can build their own jet engines as well. They can build their own nuclear power plants. I mean, nothing's impossible. And if anyone is a betting man, I bet you any money that China will produce semiconductors by itself, 5 nanometers, 3 nanometers, 2 nanometers over the next 5 years. And each year they're making a breakthrough. And already they are the largest country with the largest amount of chips that are being built every single year, and that's just going to improve year upon year. So China will help Russia, and I believe they do have a joint semiconductor partnership going on, and they will be sharing a lot of technologies together. And Russia is a very technologically advanced country. People don't really give them the credit. Russia has got hypersonic missiles, and China's got hypersonic missiles way ahead of US. Russia is very capable. China is very capable. So the fact that TSMC stops giving semiconductors to Russia, they're not going to care much, because within the next 5 years China and Russia will have their own semiconductor ecosystem, and they're not going to need the West. The world's largest processor manufacturers, Intel and AMD, have stopped supplying their products to Russia. Again, it does not matter. China have got their own processors that they've built, which are just as fast. So that really is not going to matter at all. Leading computer company manufacturers Dell and Lenovo will not deliver products to Russia. They'll just get the products from China if needed. Swedish smartphone communication technology Ericsson announced it will no longer support and do business with Russia. It doesn't matter, because Huawei will jump in. Huawei will give them the 5G connections that they needed, and Huawei is already in Russia at the moment, so they do not really care about Ericsson. Ericsson is not Huawei. Cross-border payment system Wise, an international sports betting company, Who cares about that? Cross-border payments, there's already going on between Russia and China, the digital one, and they have their own cross-border payment systems going on, so they don't really care. International sports betting company, I don't really care. I don't think they care about anything about that. I don't even know why they're doing that. Leading logistics company FedEx, UPD, and DHL have stopped delivering parcels and letters to Russian citizens and companies. So these are international FedEx stuff going from America to Russia, and I think people are pretty much given up. They're not going to need products from America or Europe. Instead, the Russian people are just going to start ordering stuff from China. You got Alibaba, and China will have their own international FedEx systems. And don't forget, Russia and China share a huge border together. So there'll be Russian companies and Chinese companies going via the borders. They have high street trains swapping goods between the countries. So Russia is not going to be worried about that at all. Maersk Logistics Company, I've already spoken about logistics. They have a huge border together, so they're not going to care. Nike will not deliver goods to Russian customers, and it will shut down the online store in Russia. Again, Russians not going to care about that. They'll just, if they need shoes, they'll buy it from China, or they'll make their own. That's not going to affect Russia that much. International job search platform Jubal.org has blocked the Russian page. I've never heard of this website, to be honest, and I don't know what this website is, and I don't think the Russians care about that, and I don't really think Russians want to work internationally. They know how much Russians are hated around the world, and all of the sanctions and everything that are being placed on the Russian people. So the last thing they want is to go and work in Europe or America. I think they'll stick to friendly countries like China or India. Amazon has closed its services to Russian citizens. Again, Russia don't care. In China, you have Alibaba and huge companies who are much bigger than Amazon, which can do exactly the same thing. Zoom has revoked software development licenses. I don't think they care. There's plenty more Zoom-like video conferencing softwares out there Russia can use and Chinese can use. So you can see all of these stuff. These are just, material things to Russia. They don't really need any of this stuff, and if they need it, they can go to China, and it really does not matter to them. Like I said, I've told you that it is mainly an export market of fuel, and the fuel prices are sky high through the roof. The only thing that Russia have to worry about is the imports, and they can get the imports from China. And they also have to worry about the ruble as well. The ruble is at the moment is going down compared to the dollar. But once Russia kind of gets more of its trade from China, once the economy stabilizes, and it will take 6 months, it will take about a year, all of these companies, they will stabilize, they will find new supplies in China, Asia, India, and everything will stabilize again within a year. Same thing happened in Crimea. Whenever these sanctions were placed on Russia, the ruble pretty much crashed. But over the years, it started stabilizing, and Russia started to become stronger and stronger. And Russia can ride the wave because if you look at the economy, they will make their money from electricity, from agriculture, from gas, oil. So they're happy. They're not really worried as much. Any financial implications or sanctions put on Russia, the Western banks are going to also suffer as well. So it's not just Russia that's going to be suffering. The whole world is going to be suffering consequences through these sanctions. Airbus and Boeing are going to be pulling out of Russia in major blow to country's aviation industry. Again, a lot of people don't realize this, but Russia is building its own airlines, working with China. They've already built a prototype. They're working with Comac, a Chinese plane maker, and they already have a prototype up and running, and that is due for release in 2025. And it's a locally built airplane, built with only parts from Russia and only parts from China. So the West is not involved at all. So if Airbus and Boeing want to pull out of Russia, Russia is not going to care, because they will have their own airline, and China will also have their own airline as well. So that really does not matter at all. McDonald's is under pressure for failing to boycott Russia as Ukraine war escalates. So McDonald's is not boycotting, so they're under a lot of pressure in the United States and the rest of the world, and so is Coca-Cola as well. You can see calls to boycott Coca-Cola grow after company refuses to pull out Russia. So there are a few companies who are fighting this, and they will kind of, they don't agree with it, and I think you have to kind of give them credit for that. They're not going along with the government's narrative, so you got to give some respect. So there are, even though some companies are boycotting Russian stuff, but not all companies are. So you got to, and again, not much media is reporting on stuff like this. So let's try and go through a few more. I'll try and get this done very quickly. First thing you see is Coca-Cola said they're going to leave the Russian market. That's not true. I've just showed you a document which was released today that Coca-Cola is not leaving. So you got to take a lot of these Western articles by salt. A lot of them don't have the right information, or they're just guessing. So this is not true. Coca-Cola has not pulled out Russia, so that's not true. Austrian bank is thinking of leaving the Russian market. When a bank is thinking of leaving the Russian market, it's not the same as leaving the Russian market or left the Russian market. It's like me saying, oh, I'm thinking of becoming the next prime minister. It doesn't mean I'm going to become the next prime minister. So again, you see a lot of these fake news articles that are using words to fool the people and to brainwash people. They use words like thinking of, which is not the same. And these articles need to provide facts, not just say thinking of this. Nord Stream 2 has been stopped, which I've already gone through. It's not been cancelled, it's been put on hold, but I don't think it's going to be unheld because of the relationship with Germany and Russia. The relationship is pretty much gone sour, so I don't think that Nord Stream 2 will ever come online. If it doesn't come online, it doesn't matter, because Russia has options. First option is, if they take half of Ukraine, they will control the pipeline going through Ukraine. So Ukraine is not going to be siphoning off gas from that pipeline anymore. And the second option is Europeans pay a high price for expensive gas and oil, and Russia don't care. As long as they're getting the high price for it, they don't really care. So Russia is not affected by Nord Stream 2 being down. These European companies are paying Russia a really, really high price for gas and oil, and Russia is happy with that money. Canada bans import of crude oil from Russia. Well, have you seen the distance between Russia and Canada? It's a lot. So Canada will buy from US instead. I don't think Russia cares. If Canada's not going to buy from Russia, Russia will have other buyers in India or China or Belarus or Africa. There's a lot of countries that will buy the oil from Russia if Canada doesn't. ExxonMobil will cease oil and gas operations in Russia, same as Shell, same as Britain's BP. Well, let me just say that these companies are just losing out, because Russia has one of the largest amount of oil and gas in the world, and if they are going away from Russia, they're going to lose out, because these reserves are going to last for years and years and years, and the prices are just going to go up and up and up. And these companies pulling out of Russia now means they're just going to lose out in the long term, to be honest. Britain's BP. Britain doesn't have much gas and oil around the UK shores. They're pretty much exhausted most of it. They don't have much stake in other countries. There's not much reserves, being discovered in the rest of the world. So them pulling out is a big mistake, and they're just going to lose out in their profits. Italy's any plans to exit the Blue Stream pipeline joint venture with Gazprom. So again, Italy's any plans to exit. Plans to exit is not the same as exiting. Again, they're using words. So if I say I've got plans to go to Germany today, it doesn't mean I'm going to catch a flight and go to Germany. You know, these are two different things. Austrian energy company walks away from joint venture from Gazprom, so that's fine. If they want to walk away, they can walk away. Swiss mining and commodities trading company Glencore will review its business. So now we're getting to the part where, you know, this article is basically running out of things to write, and it's just coming up with bullshit. It's just saying thinking of, it will review, it plans, and it's using all of these words with all of these companies. I don't know which one's true, which one's not. I've already told you one article with the Coca-Cola, and that's definitely not true. And so I'm just thinking whether I should read the rest of it, really, because it all seems to be crap. It's all, you know, thinking of or reviewing, or I'm thinking of doing this, thinking of doing that, but it's not the same as doing it, right? So I've already gone over Boeing. Russia doesn't care, it's building its own airlines, and the European Union has banned the supply and lease of aircraft. Again, it doesn't matter. You know, Russia and China is more than capable of having their own airlines, and they don't really need European airlines or parts. Same with Airbus. Britain and Canada have closed all of their ports to Russia. Again, Brexit Britain is just shooting itself in the foot. You know, they're calling it global Britain. You know, as soon as they left Brexit, they pissed off all of their European partners. They pissed off Russia. They pissed off the Chinese. And even America has not done a free trade deal with Britain. So I don't know what Britain is doing. They think they're still a superpower. They think this is the 1800s. They are not a superpower. You know, they are not the colonizers they were in the 1800s. They don't have any say in what goes on around the world. You know, they need to get rid of this colonial mentality, and they still think they got some rights to dictate how the rest of the world does or thinks, and I just think they need to climb off their high horse. Disney, Sony Pictures and Warner Bros. Are suspending film rentals in Russia. Again, Russia's not going to care. They'll just get films from other parts of the world, China, India, or Russia will make their own. You know, I don't really think Russia cares about that at all. Netflix has refused to broadcast Russian films. Can you see how petty all of this is getting? The Cannes Film Festival has refused to accept Russian films for screening. Oh, really? Oh my god. So the film industry has become political. The sports industry has become, you know, politics as well. You can see the sports impact. They've kicked out Spartan Moscow from the European competition, tennis, basketball, and I think this is it, guys. I'm not going to go through any more. Most of it is just crap. And the main things I wanted to talk about was the financial stuff, and so I'm going to give you a quick summary of the presentation. I just wanted to make the point that not only Russian financial systems are going to be affected by the sanctions, but the sanctions are going to affect their own systems in the West. They could probably lose 150 billion, if not more. The sanctions are not going to affect Russian trade, because Russian trade is mainly energy and agriculture, and they will diversify to other countries that need it, China, India, or any others. And imports, they are quite happy to buy imports from China, or any other countries that are friendly enough to sell it to them, but mainly it's going to be from China. So you can see Russia is not going to be affected that much from these sanctions. The ruble is going down, and I've already said in my previous presentation that if your own currency goes down and you are a main exporter instead of an importer, you as a country will make more money, because your currency is, you know, has gone down, and exporting goods would mean you make more money on the export market. And because Russia is a trade surplus country, which means it exports more than it imports, Russia will become much richer because of the lower ruble. And that's how economics works. You're welcome to look it up. They will bypass these sanctions. They will find ways around it, same way they did while they got sanctioned in Crimea. And Russia is a too big a country, they're too valuable to the world. And I will end my presentation now. Let me know what you guys think. I look forward to reading your comments, and I'll see you in the next video. Take care for now.